How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States, the third hour from fine Kiowa Island. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm supposed to come home tomorrow morning, but Delta moved my flight, getting ready for the hurricane. Things shuffled up on the schedule, and I had to get up at 4 a.m., so I played golf with Mike Pence yesterday and decided I could bail on him this afternoon to be able to get home at a reasonable time tonight. So now, my friends, want to discuss a topic that I have gotten emails about. I've actually gotten, now, and I realize it's because I talk about faith and stuff on the radio. People are like, you haven't talked about the story. You haven't talked about this data. Will you talk about this? So, yes, I am going to talk about it. In large part now because Ruth Graham at the New York Times, who I'm not a huge fan of her religion writing, but let me just begin with this. So here's the headline: in a first among Christians, young men are more religious than young women. On a beautiful Sunday morning in early September, dozens of young men in Waco, Texas, started their day at Grace Church. Men greeted visitors at the door, manned the information table, and handed out bulletins. 4 of the 5 musicians on stage were men. So was the pastor who delivered the sermon, and most of the college students packing the first few rows. I'm so grateful for this church, Ryan Amodi, age 28, told the congregation before a second pastor, Buck Rogers, baptized him in a tank of water in the sanctuary. Grace Church, a Southern Baptist congregation, has not made a conscious effort to attract young men. It's an unremarkable size and is in many ways an ordinary evangelical church. Yet its leaders have noticed for several years now that young men outnumber young women in their pews. When the church opened a small outpost in the nearby town of Robinson last year, 12 of the 16 young people regularly attending were men. We've been talking about it from the beginning, said Phil Barnes, a pastor at this congregation, Hope Church. What's the Lord doing? Why is he sending us all of these young men? The dynamics at Grace are a dramatic example of an emerging truth. For the first time in modern American history, young men are now more religious than their female peers. They attend services more often and are more likely to identify as religious. We've never seen it before, Ryan Berg, an associate professor of political science at Eastern Illinois University, said of the flip. Among Generation Z Christians, this dynamic is playing out in a stark way. The men are staying in church while the women are leaving at a remarkable clip. Church membership has been dropping in the United States for years, but within Gen Z, almost 40% of women now describe themselves as religiously unaffiliated, compared with 34% of men, according to a survey last year of more than 5,000 Americans by the Survey Center on American Life at the American Enterprise Institute. In every other age group, men were more likely to be unaffiliated. That tracks with research that has shown that women have been consistently more religious than men, a finding so reliable that some scholars have characterized it as something like a universal human truth. The men and women of Gen Z are also on divergent trajectories in almost every facet of their lives, including education, sexuality, and spirituality. Young women are still spiritual and seeking, according to surveys of religious life. But they came of age as the Me Too movement opened a national conversation about sexual harassment and gender-based abuse, which inspired widespread exposure of abuse in church settings under the hashtag #ChurchToo, and the overturning of Roe v. Wade in 2022 compelled many of them to begin paying closer attention to reproductive rights. Young men have different concerns. They're less educated than their female peers. In major cities, they earn less. At the same time, they place a higher value on traditional family life. Childless young men are likelier than childless young women to say they want to become parents someday by a margin of 12%. This growing gender divide has the potential to reshape the landscape of not just religion, but also of family life and politics. The New York Times, in a poll of 6 swing states in August, showed young men favored Trump by 13 points, young women favored Harris by 38 points. It's too early to know if this trend in churchgoing indicates a long-term realignment, says Russell Moore, editor-in-chief of Christianity Today. But he marveled in the strangeness of Christian history. I'm not sure what church life looks like with a decreasing presence of women, he said. We need both spiritual mothers and spiritual fathers. Now, I'll stop there. This goes on for a while longer, but I got some thoughts here. We won't get into the theology except to say this. In Genesis 3, when God pronounces his judgment after the forbidden fruit is eaten, he tells Eve her desire will be for her husband. And this is one of the most misunderstood lines of Scripture in the entire Bible, Old Testament and New Testament combined. Because it does not mean that the wife will wish to be subservient to the husband and cater to the husband and put the husband in charge. That's not what it means at all. What it actually means is that the woman will wish to dominate the husband and lord over the husband. Her desire will be control of the husband. How do I know this? Because 2 chapters over, Cain has murdered Abel. And the exact same phrase, using the exact same words, is used when God tells Cain that sin's desire will be for you. Fast forward to the 21st century of the United States of America. Women are convinced that they are a persecuted minority in this country. They have higher attendance rates in colleges. They have greater scholastic abilities and acceptance and opportunities. They have higher incomes than their single male counterparts in major cities from Los Angeles to New York. They are catered to by politicians and the political class who desire the female vote. If a woman gets pregnant and chooses to kill the child, there's nothing the man can do to stop it. And if the woman gets pregnant and desires to keep the child, there's nothing the man can do to stop it, but he's obligated to it even if he wants the abortion. Men are put upon by society, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And oppressed people and people who feel devalued by society go to church. Because there they encounter a God in whose image they're made, who makes them feel valuable and gives them purpose. In our society, boys for a very long time have been told that all masculinity is toxic. Toxic masculinity is holding the door open for a woman. It's just kind of wild that we've gotten to this point in society where the roles have been reversed, and yet right now, there is a woman listening who feels like she is a second-class citizen. Right now, there is a woman listening. And by the way, I can tell you this because every time Mother's Day comes around and I talk about Mother's Day, there's not a single man in America who emails me and says, I'm a single father, what about me? But I will be doggone if there is not every single year when I talk about Father's Day, some woman who feels compelled to email me to tell me how devalued she feels by me because she's a single mother and she's the father too, and I didn't mention them. There is a level of selfishness out there right now, and I may be offending the entirety of my female audience, and I apologize, but if you cannot recognize that at this point in society, we have rebalanced the scales in favor of women in a way that it's not actually equal rights anymore. You wanted equality, and now men are becoming women to get those equal rights. The people who feel put down on in society find church. And the reason young men are finding church is because society has degraded their value and purpose so much that they're going in search of meaning. They've been told for so long to be less masculine, to be less male, to be less boy acting. They're going in search of purpose. They're now less likely to get college scholarships. They're now less likely to do well in college. They're now less likely than women to get a college degree. They're now less likely to earn what a woman can earn. And yet the myth is still that men out-earn women everywhere. You hear this all the time. The wage gap. Actually, in major cities in America, single women earn more than single men. The wage gap exists because men and women get married, women have kids, and they leave the workforce and then come back and they alter their work scale. It is a mythology by the feminist movement that this wage gap is some sort of serious thing in society anymore. And the entirety of the entertainment complex, the media and the like, values women above men in their opinions and their likes and everything else. And that's just true whether you want to believe it or not. And if you're a woman right now, you're probably seething with me saying this, and that's part of the problem. You can't actually handle what's going on in society. If you're a mother, however, of sons, you know it's true. That's why men are going to church in a disproportionate pattern to women right now. They're trying to find purpose and meaning in life in a society that has told them to be less boy, less man. The problem here is what churches are they going to, because I see this online, and this is my concern with the whole thing, is there are a whole lot of people on social media, I call them the Theo Bros. They all go to the same barber, by the way. They have these very close clipped sides and very distinctive parts. Their hair is parted in a very particular way. It's all combed. They all look exactly the same. They all go to the same gym. They all have the same barber, and they all say the same nonsense on Twitter. And it's basically they're this warrior class of Theo Bros who think it's all about the coming Christian nationalist war. And that's my concern, is that some of these young men are getting swept up online with these Theo Bros who they don't actually care about Jesus. They care about politics, but they wrap their politics in Jesus' name and do a polluted version of Jesus in order to advance their politics. I see it all the time. I know people. I have friends who are like, I don't know that I should say friends anymore. They're unhappy with me because I've refused to go down the road. I actually had a conversation with someone a while back who he became very militant, he said, because he saw friends of his go woke in church. And this dude has just gone off the reservation, total into Christian nationalism. And Jesus is now this weaponized figure who draws the sword and throws the punch. And he doesn't cry, he doesn't weep, he doesn't hang out with the women, he doesn't hang out with sinners. It's been remarkable. So young men, if you're listening to me right now, yes, go to church. You have gone down the Ben Shapiro rabbit hole. He's led you to Jordan Peterson, who himself is finding the Lord, and you're going in search of the Lord as well. That's actually a good thing. Just make sure you're going somewhere where the Bible is preached and not the gospel of politics of the Republican Party wrapped in a Jesus blanket. Because there are a whole lot of people out there right now who call themselves a Christian, who never darken the door of a church on Sunday, but they throw around Jesus as a weapon against the people that they don't like, and basically they're just a tool of the Republican Party right now. You know, Jesus would not be a Republican, nor would he be a Democrat. He's the God of everything. And if your politics align so closely with a political party that you have decided that the God of all creation would be a member of that political party, you've probably allowed your politics to shape your faith instead of allowing your faith to shape your politics. If you can't find something to disagree with your political party about, you've probably allowed your politics to consume your faith. If you think you can ignore the character of the politicians of your party, you've probably allowed your politics to shape your religion. If you think that you can give a complete pass to the policies of your party, even though they may be detrimental to people of faith, you've probably allowed your politics to shape your religion. You got to be very careful out there about it. Young men are, of course, going to church more than young women these days because society is more aligned against young men than young women than at any time in history. And the people who are downcast in society are always the ones who go looking for Jesus.
Blinds.com Cyber Monday Last Chance is happening now. Don't miss out on up to 45% off site-wide. A Blinds.com design expert can help you make the perfect selection on your schedule. We can handle everything from measure to your whole home installed for one low cost. With over 25 million windows covered, Blinds.com is the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings. Save up to 45% site-wide, plus a free professional measure right now at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States. So I last night grabbed a glass of bourbon with an attorney general from a state. I will leave his name out of it. Very nice guy. But we got on the subject of the Russians. And one of his frustrations is, so he gets national security briefings. And he says they're nonpartisan. They're from a long-time operatives in the national security agency who everybody kind of trusts on both sides because they've been around there for so long. One of the wise old hands. And so what he was saying was he's frustrated with the conversations about Russian disinformation and the way the Democrats so screwed things up with the Steele dossier. Because the Steele dossier was a Russian disinformation campaign that the Democrats weaponized against not just Donald Trump, but the Republican Party, so that they could then claim that the Republicans were stealing the election. And he said what he tries to convey to people is that two things can be true. That the one thing can be true that the Steele dossier was a hatchet job on Donald Trump, and that Trump was not using the Russians to steal the election, contrary to Democratic claims. But also, the Russians are deeply trying to interfere in our election and seed misinformation and disinformation. And he said he is convinced that some of the people on social media who have massive followings are actually followed by Russia bots and amplified bots. And he says this is happening on both sides. The Democrats and the Republicans are sowing chaos, he says, and it's not a coincidence that some of the Democrats out there are able to get amplified by Russian bots about how the Russians want to take out Kamala Harris. It just sows more distrust. He says the Russians are playing both sides, and his caution is just that a lot of times, particularly on the right these days, we're believing social media influencers because we look at their high number of followers and think they must have clout, and actually these people are just being followed by a bunch of Russian bots and amplified liars. And his whole thing is, will you please encourage your audience to be careful out there, because the Russians aren't playing the Republicans, they're playing Americans, and they're doing it quite successfully. Based on the intelligence briefings. It was a wild conversation. And he had a lot of words to say about the Chinese as well, which I will get to at some point. Right now, I got to tell you about Americans for Prosperity. They are the leading and largest grassroots think tank in the United States of America. On either side, they have the largest grassroots army. And they're able to teach you how to be a compelling conservative activist, to advocate for freedom around the world and freedom here at home and free markets and free people and common sense conservatism. They'd love to have you on their team. All you have to do is go to americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. You sign up with them, and they make you a highly effective conservative activist. They teach you how to go door to door, to talk to your neighbors about common sense conservative solutions for America. They teach you how to go to your local government or your state government, or just to be the most informed person in your circle of friends. All you have to do is go to americansforprosperity.org/Eric. americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. Go sign up, volunteer with Americans for Prosperity today. Be a part of a great movement fighting for common sense conservatism at americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson. My last day at Kiowa Island, thanks to the folks here at the Sanctuary, doing this show out of my hotel room and everything has been kind of a interesting experience with the internet here, but they've done a good job to help me stabilize it and stuff. So very, very nice people. It's probably too fancy for me, but that's okay. I want to talk about the Jack Smith stuff, but before I get there, I saw this story. Philip found it. I was actually reading it as he found it, sent it to me and said, you should talk about this because it's kind of relevant to what's going on here. Let me just read you this. Forget the headline. This is in the Wall Street Journal. For years, Argentina imposed one of the world's strictest rent control laws. It was meant to keep homes such as the stately Belle Epoque apartments of Buenos Aires affordable. Epoch, I guess I'm supposed to say Belle Epoque. But instead, officials here say, rent soared. Now the country's new president, Javier Milei, has scrapped the rental law, along with most government price controls, in a fiscal experiment that he is conducting to revive South America's second biggest economy. The result? The Argentine capital is undergoing a rental market boom. Landlords are rushing to put their properties back on the market, with Buenos Aires rental supplies increasing by 170%. While rents are still up in nominal terms, many renters are getting better deals than ever, with a 40% decline in the real price of rental properties when adjusted for inflation since last October, says Federico Gonzalez Rucco, an economist at Buenos Aires-based Imperia Consultores. Milei's move to undo rent control regulations has resulted in one of the clearest cut victories for what he calls economic shock therapy. He is methodically taking apart a system of price controls, closing government agencies, and lifting trading restrictions built up over 8 decades of socialist and military rule in an effort that has upended the lives of many Argentinians. In Buenos Aires, a city dubbed the Paris of the South for its broad avenues and cafe culture, many apartments long sat empty, with landlords preferring to keep them vacant or lease them as vacation rentals rather than comply with the government's rent law. In 2022, there were some 200,000 empty properties in Buenos Aires, up 45% from 2018, according to a report by Cedisu, a Buenos Aires-based policy group that focuses on urban development. Finding an affordable apartment under the rent control law was difficult. Alander Oliver spent over 18 months looking for a place to rent. There were few places to rent, and those available were very expensive, she said. After rent control was scrapped, she found a studio apartment for $200 a month. Many new contracts, now permitted in dollars as well as pesos, stipulate rent increases every 3 months, real estate agents and tenants say. That's made housing costs unaffordable for some people already struggling to pay high food and utility prices. Still, rent prices have stabilized. Monthly price increases are now at their lowest rate since 2021 as more apartments become available. The Milei administration has scrapped price controls on milk and sugar. He's lifted controls on cooking gas, removed export controls on beef, and cut government requirements to import steel, hoping to ease construction costs. And he's ditched restrictions, he said, made renting an apartment an odyssey that hurt those it was trying to help. I'm going to stop there. I needed to put this in context by reading you that, because here's the thing you got to note. Does any of this sound familiar to you? A lot of what I'm reading that he's getting rid of are the policies that both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump wish to implement in the United States of America. That is the wildest part. So Kamala Harris and price controls. She wants to stop price gouging. She wants to give people $25,000 for the down payment of home. And every economist, left, right, and center, except the real far left wackadoos who believe in modern monetary theory, are like, you give people $25,000 for a down payment on a house, every house in America instantly becomes $25,000 more expensive. She wants to put price controls to stop what she calls price gouging. But then you got Donald Trump wants to, put tariffs on steel imports. He wants to put tariffs on everything from every country. He wants export and import controls. He and Harris are both doing things that Milei is scrapping in Argentina. And the result in Argentina is actually that it's working. He's causing prices to go down by getting rid of price controls. He's causing inflation to go down by cutting public spending. This is again from the Wall Street Journal. Milei, a libertarian economist, long warned Argentinians that his free market changes would initially make conditions worse before they got better. as he slashed public spending to tame inflation. He said it was necessary to unravel tight economic controls he inherited from the previous left-wing Peronist government, which implemented price controls on 50,000 products. Milei says his measures are delivering results. He's projecting annual inflation of 18% next year, down from 237%, as he works to tame the turmoil. But the government faces challenges. Bringing inflation down further, after being stuck at roughly 4% a month in recent months, will be difficult with little room for spending cuts and demands to restart public works and increase pensions. We are headed towards an Argentinian reality in this country, with both parties driving us off the fiscal cliff. And what I find very funny right now is there are a lot of Republicans who will blast the Republicans for not caring about spending, but then they get very defensive when you say, yeah, and Donald Trump is one of them. Democrats like to blast Republicans for not really caring, and the Democrats, they want to spend money too, and then they raise taxes, which would be economically harmful in the country. Milei knows what works. He got rid of price controls on rent, and the rental market has become flooded, and people are able to find housing in a way they haven't been able to find housing in Buenos Aires. He got rid of price controls on sugar, and has actually stabilized the price of sugar. And guess what? People now can find sugar in grocery stores where it had been scarce. He's allowed the importing of natural gas for cooking gas. It's actually increased capacity and reserves. He's allowed the exporting of Argentine beef. It's actually increased the jobs and opportunities for Argentinians. So even as prices have gone up, wages are now going up more than inflation in some parts of the Argentine economy. All these things were predicted based on the economics of Thomas Sowell and Milton Friedman. Friedman was a genius economist, a free marketeer. And the Republican Party of this country used to be acolytes of Milton Friedman, but with J.D. Vance, he's decided he wants to embrace the economic policies that have failed in Argentina. And now, Vance won't tell you that, but when you actually read Vance's economic proposals for this country, they're exactly the Peronista-style economic arguments that wrecked the Argentine economy. And it's unfortunate that the Republican Party has moved back into this protectionist economic policy positions that we know historically don't work. Where are the common sense conservative solutions for this sort of stuff? Well, we're finding that Milei is actually more of a free market economist than Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are. And we're actually finding in real world economics in Argentina that his policy prescriptions are working to turn around that economy. In this country, too many people on the left and the right want to use government as a tool for their agenda. But the more government there is to use as a tool for the agenda, the more expensive things come and the more we have inflation, because government generates inflation as it dumps money into the economy. We know these things. These are not hard things. The supply and demand curves are not hard concepts for Americans to understand. The only people the supply and demand curves are difficult to understand for are politicians of both parties right now. We should pay attention to what's happening with Argentina. The free market reforms of Javier Milei are turning that country around and revving up its economy at a time when both parties in this country are moving towards economic protectionism in a way that's going to crush our economy. Both parties are doing it. Both parties are at fault, and we should not mince words with this and stop trying to apologize for a political party that has abandoned free market economics that have served us so well, and now instead wants to move to trade tariffs and protectionism that'll just cause inflation and drive up costs for everybody. It's absolutely infuriating to me. And at the end of the day, one of the diagnoses of 2024 is going to be how both parties economically largely became the same. We decided to fight over culture instead of basic economics. And while we need a culture fight in this country, at the end of the day, it's the economy that pays the bills. And I cannot believe both parties are engaged in this revisionist history, rejecting the free market economics that we know work. I'll get off my soapbox now that I've infuriated you. Spare me the hate mail. Now let me talk about Jack Smith before I get out of here. So Smith wants to essentially do a pre-election stunt where he relitigates January 6th. Now, the judge is probably going to let him do it because she hates Donald Trump. But I don't know that this is going to work as well for the Democrats, because remember, every time the prosecutors have come after Donald Trump, Republicans have circled the wagon around him. And while there's been some wavering Republicans lately, even at this conference, so I'm in Kiowa, I'm at this conference. It's a lot of conservatives, and the room is very, very split between people who like Trump and don't like him. Almost everyone's voting for him. In fact, I haven't met anyone who says they're not voting for him. Some of them really like him. Some of them, they're voting for him. They don't care for him. To a person, everyone here agrees that what has happened to Donald Trump in the court system is lawfare. The Democrats have weaponized the judicial system to come after him. Now, if you're a Democrat, I'm sure you disagree with that. But for almost every Republican I know, there is widespread agreement from Alvin Bragg to these other cases in New York to what's happening with Jack Smith and with Fani Willis in Atlanta. It's lawfare. They've weaponized the courts and the law to try to get Donald Trump. The Democrats are undeterred in it. And I actually do think it helps Donald Trump because it makes Republicans who don't like Donald Trump sympathetic to him, to see him attacked like he is through a court system where the Democrats are very clearly on a path to try to bleed him dry. Democrats, of course, don't appreciate that. They're so blinded in their hatred of Donald Trump, they do not understand how they're actually undermining their arguments against Donald Trump. They call him a threat to democracy, and Republicans see them as a threat to democracy by weaponizing the judicial system to take on a political opponent instead of trying to beat him at the ballot box. If it was a normal judge, I would say the judge would not let Jack Smith have a pre-election litigation. But this judge hates Trump so much, she probably is going to. This is NBC. Lawyers for former President Donald Trump are pushing back against efforts by federal prosecutors to streamline arguments and potential appeals in his 2020 election interference case, arguing they could improperly influence the race for the White House. In papers filed Monday in federal court, defense attorneys contend that special counsel Jack Smith's plans to file an oversized brief about whether certain Trump actions from his presidency were official or unofficial acts is improper and should not be allowed. Departures from these practices should never be countenanced because they risk allowing prosecutors to impact national elections. But the situation is even worse here because the special counsel's office is seeking to do so by turning criminal procedure on its head in order to file a 180-page false hit piece. Prosecutors say the filing is necessary because it would address the Supreme Court's concerns about presidential immunity issues in the case while limiting the number of possible appeals. They've asked the judge who's overseeing the election to allow them to file a 180-page brief on the issue on Thursday. I personally think it's election interference. This can wait. You've got 42 days until the election. There's no reason for them to have to do it. Or file it now in camera, that is, file it now in a way that it can't be made public so that the judge can review it. There's no reason for it to be made public to air this list of grievances. I do think that Jack Smith is trying to weaponize the legal system to go after Donald Trump. Now, before I get out of here, I got to mention Vision Computers to you. If you go to 404-COMPUTE, call them at 404-COMPUTE, or go to visioncomputers.com. They can build a computer for you. Not only can they build a computer for you, it's going to be the best computer you can buy. And not only is it going to be the best computer you can buy, but it's actually going to hold up well long term, and you get their award-winning tech support. Go to visioncomputers.com or call them at 404-COMPUTE. If you're a small business, if you're an independent contractor, you can't afford downtime. And you also can't afford to have an IT team around you. If you're an independent contractor, you're in the gig economy, you need a computer that works. Vision Computer can be your IT support. If you buy your computer for Vision Computers, you get their IT support completely for free. If you have a computer and you didn't get it from Vision, for just $179 a year, you can get their award-winning 5-star support where you get a phone number, you call them 15 seconds or less, you get the answer. They can do email, they can do printer support, whatever you need. You can't afford downtime, particularly if you're a sole proprietor. Vision Computers can keep you going. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. Call them and tell them I sent you. You're going to save even more money. 404-COMPUTE. So as I mentioned yesterday, I played 9 holes of golf. Actually, we wound up cutting it short. We got to the 7th hole because we had to go to dinner. I played 5 of them with Mike Pence, who is a pretty good golfer. But I got to tell you, so I've known him for a very long time. 2004 was the first time we met. And we're on this golf course, and everyone's like, "Oh, sir, that's a great shot. Oh, Mr. Vice President. Oh, sir, sir, sir." Yeah. And I looked at one of the guys who was golfing with us, who I've also known for a very long time. I said, "Greg, this man is not the Vice President of the United States. He is an ordinary American citizen like you and me. This is America. He's not royalty. You can stop all this sir stuff, or you need to start calling me God." They all got a kick out of it. I try to keep the man humble. I mean, I've known him forever. He's just Mike. It's kind of funny how, oh, Mr. Vice President, oh, sir, he is a very nice man. He's a good golfer, too. He had some bad shots. I had bad shots. I finally told him he needed to leave me alone and go play with someone else because he was bad luck. Once he left, I started hitting pretty good. Everyone told me this ocean course was just so hard, it's so difficult. We were playing the front nine, which is kind of protected from the winds. It wasn't terrible. Saw a couple alligators. I don't do well. This is the first time I've ever played in a group like this. Normally, I'm with just good friends. What we did do is we played, and whoever hit the best shot, everybody picked up their ball and dropped it there. And it was also my first time with a caddy. I've never had a caddy. Now, normally, you need to understand, I'm not a good golfer. I've gotten better. Kyle Morris, my golf coach, has been giving me lessons, and he's in my head, and I'm on the course trying to adjust my swing, and it's just I finally was like, you know what, just play golf. Stop trying to do your lessons on the golf course, and it worked. I got better. I actually did hit one shot off the tee on a par 5, 275 yards. No, I'm sorry, it was 269 yards. We thought it was 275, but so I got a little app on my phone, and it was 269, and it was perfectly straight down the fairway, and it wound up being the best ball, and everybody dropped where my ball was. And then I promptly hit my ball again, and off it went into a lagoon with an alligator sitting there, so I didn't try to go get it. But I had a really good shot. And then Mike Pence came back, and I told him, "Go away. You're bad luck. I was hitting fine until you got close." So I'm supposed to go play. They're going to be on like the 14th or 15th hole when I get out there. I'm supposed to go play with them this afternoon, but I've also got to go catch my flight and go to the airport because I was going to leave in the morning, but they moved my flight around because of the hurricane. And so I got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I don't want to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm not rich enough to fly private. So my secretary moved my flight to this evening. So I will actually get home sometime around like 9 o'clock tonight, which is better, in anticipation of a hurricane. Fun times. Those of you who live in Florida and Georgia, prepare yourselves. We got a big storm coming in the next couple of days. So keep it tuned to your local radio station, and I'll talk to y'all tomorrow.